this Todd Bowles team, this Jason Light outfit, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're one of the few programmatic teams in the NFL. And by that I mean they have a way of doing things. They have a program in place, down to the fact that the guy who we had on the show earlier this week, Levante David, there's a silhouette of him in their draft room, and it describes basically the archetype of what they want a Buccaneer to be. They have an intentionality about them. They've won 4 straight division titles quietly. Although they won a Super Bowl, it feels like people still undervalue them because we're in the post-Tom Brady era. They stuck the landing on bringing Baker Mayfield in, who people left for dead. They've had 3 offensive coordinators over the past few years. They've had 2 different quarterbacks, as I mentioned. Todd Bowles has won in cap hell 2-3 years ago. He won with injuries last year, got him in the playoffs. Really knocking on the door of elite this year, and I think they walk through the door this year. And the question I would ask to people listening and watching, and you don't have to fry me in the fucking comments, but tell me what you think. Has any NFC team that was in the playoffs last year gained more ground than the Bucs? And I mean that in a sense that the people who are injured are going to be back. There's a lot of assuming that they're going to stay healthy. But they also added free agents and draft picks in a really surgical manner. And those picks were engineered by a scouting program and a GM who has a track record of doing the right shit. So I do trust them. I'm sorry. Just by getting injured players back, Evans, Godwin, Servassier Dennis, who's got the best name in the NFL. He's got a first name for a last name and a liquor brand for a first name. Like, that's electric. That guy was born to be a star. And when we watched him early last year, we were like, he will be an important player for this Bucs team, but he got hurt. And I didn't even mention Antoine Winfield, who, and I kind of lobbed this alley-oop to Levante David the other day. I said, has there been a player since you came along that you thought, hey, this is a guy I can pass the torch to? This is the next guy. They say he's him. Is he him? You know, it's kind of that's what the cool kids say now. My kids, I don't know if it's the cool kids because my kids say it, but like they're like, I'm him. Is he that man?
There you go.
Is he that man, right? That's what they're talking about when they talk about Levante David. When they draft a guy, they ask, is he that man? And Antoine Winfield is cut from the same cloth. He's a guy that was a pro from the minute he walked into the NFL, and he's a Swiss Army knife. And when you lose him, you don't just lose a player. You lose an access point to doing a number of things defensively. And they lost him for 9 games last year. When you miss 9 games as an important player on a team, it's kind of like your year didn't even happen. You're never going to be yourself. And the defense is never going to be itself. So they've added the pieces. We talked about the draft, free agency, obviously, where you've got guys like Hassan Reddick who are going to play very meaningful snaps for them and going to address positions of need. They bring in the wide receiver from Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka. By the way, McMillan came on strong last year. If everybody stays healthy, they have an embarrassment of riches outside, right? That's a big if because Evans is older and Godwin's had injuries, but they have enough depth this year to overcome if somebody does go down. And they also showed the flexibility last year when those guys got hurt to get in 13 personnel and run the football. If you remember some of those games where like their third running back, Sean Tucker, is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ran for like 100 yards and, you had a couple 100-yard rushers in the same game. Like, at one point we thought Raachad White was going to be the future of the Bucs backfield. Then it turned into this Bucky Irving show, and in the second half of last season, he went off. So his usage wasn't even like as high as it could have been. They've got a fresh stable of backs. They have guys outside. They returned 5 starters on the offensive line. How many teams in the NFL are returning 5 starters on the offensive line. Now, Wirfs is going to miss a month, probably. Charlie Heck's going to be the guy that steps in for him. I also think what's helpful for this team, when you look at an offensive line, and they don't really need the help, but maybe for a guy that's filling in, is they get the ball out. Like, they play with timing. Quick game is lethal for them. Also, I want to take a second. My rotator cuff's a little tight, but if I could pat myself on the back, I did say last year that Will Barton's going to be a Hall of Famer. Said that before. Graham Barton. I got to know his name when I induct him in the Hall of Fame. Will Barton is like a shooting guard. I think he played for the Denver Nuggets. So Graham Barton, the Duke center, he's going to be a second-year guy, hell of a player. Listen, it's a fun group. We just went through the entire offense, and then you get to the quarterback who's on his 8th coordinator in like an 8-year career in Baker Mayfield. And he's a guy who doesn't lack confidence, right? In a good way. I think we've seen that like over time. Back when he like planted the flag at the middle of the field, like when they beat Kansas or whatever, and some of his antics, which I think some people conflated with maybe some of the overconfidence that like a Johnny Manziel had, right? Like he's not the same type of guy. Like he's got the right kind of confidence, right? And not for Johnny Manziel to catch a stray. I love Johnny Manziel, but like I think a lot of people looked at Baker Mayfield and saw a guy who was immature and stubborn and all that stuff, and maybe he was, but he grew over his career, and he's had to deal with a lot of bullshit, including one of those coordinators being Freddie Kitchens and things like that. Being a guy that gets run out of Cleveland. Cleveland hadn't won shit in a long time. They're guys walking around with jerseys with 20 pieces of athletic tape on the back with quarterbacks' names written on them, right? Like from Dorsey to whoever. And Mayfield's the guy that goes to plays Pittsburgh in the playoffs, and they don't just beat him, they score like 40 points. And then he gets hurt and they run him out of town. Like he has not deserved the treatment he has gotten in the NFL, and I'm very happy that the Rams took a chance on him, because I felt like that was an opportunity for him to take a beat, spend some time with a guru, and rehab himself. He spent time in Carolina and then winds up in the same division. Now is the guy. And I think what's so different about this coordinator change, and certainly from Canales to Cohen is kind of the same thing, but now 3 years in, when you have a new coach in the NFL, and I had a number of coaches, and I was one of those guys that, like, when a coach comes in early in my career, I'm a high draft pick. At certain points in my career, I'm one of the better, if not one of the best players on defense. Like, that new coach is going to come in and find you first. Like, you're one of the first people that new coach finds. And I hate the feeling of a coach coming in and trying to reinvent the wheel and being like, hey, really like your game, but I got some new things that you're going to try that, or I have some ideas of ways that you can reinvent the wheel. And usually that conversation is had in the summer or in the spring. And the guy sitting in the other chair is like, come on, like I'm making strides. Like I'm playing well. Like why we got to change everything? And I think for a number of these coordinator changes and situational changes, Baker was the guy that like people were trying to fix, even though maybe it wasn't as broken as people thought. In Tampa, it's certainly not broken. And now, with Cohen leaving, you got Josh Grizzard. You listen to Lizard Lick, North Carolina, which I imagine on my little Google Maps would be like a little town, unincorporated community of 238 people with like a tractor pull and shit like that and a bunch of moonshine. It's just a suburb of Raleigh. But anyways, this guy, he's young. He was in Miami for a long time. He's been in the building with the Bucs, but he's also been in Tampa, and he's a guy who's, the conversation with Baker is probably going like this: we're going to build on what we have, and we're going to try to stay ahead of the curve, but we're not reinventing the wheel. And so I think Baker's got a lot of confidence anyways, but this is as confident as he's ever been, and for the right reasons. And the guys in the locker room are confident in him. So I think with all that having been said, This offense, when it's firing on all cylinders, is hell. It's tough to play this team. And so can they stay healthy? And can the offensive coordinator just build on what they did last year?